Hey, shalom, shalom from your Dutch Uncle John, here to tell you what it is with another Tanakh Talk. This time on 1 Chronicles chapter 21, verse 1. First, let's just read the verse. It says, "And Satan stood up against Israel and moved David to number Israel." What is this even about? Well, first of all, this is the first mention of Satan's name in the Bible. Okay, well that's a little tidbit of information. Okay, and it says that he stood up against Israel and moved David to number Israel. David was about to go into battle, and David thought, we should count our troops. We should know how many we have, whether or not we're going to win this. No, you don't need to number your troops if you're going to fight for God, because you'll be fighting with God. He will be on your side. Who cares how many you have? What was the story? Remember Gideon? Gideon, they were about to be attacked by the Midianites and the Amalekites. This is in, I think, Judges chapter 6 and 7. So Gideon blows the trumpet and musters all the Israelites, and they all come together, and I think there were 32,000 showed up to fight. And God tells Gideon, Gideon, you have too many soldiers. Send some of them home. What? So Gideon tells the people, listen, if any of you guys want to go home, we don't need you. And 22,000 left. So now they're down to 10,000. And God comes to Gideon and says, Gideon, you still have too many soldiers. And the reason God said this was the truth, this was going to be, because if Israel won the battle with 32,000, Israel could puff up and say, we won the battle. God didn't want that. God was going to do the fighting for them. So now it's down to 10,000 soldiers. God said it's still too many. Here's what you do, Gideon. Take them all down to the stream to get a drink of water. So the 10,000 show up at the stream, and some of them put their head down in there and they're lapping up water. Yet there were some who cupped their hands, took it down to the water, brought the water up to their face and drank. There's a difference. You put your head down into the water, you're not paying attention. But if you keep your head up and you bring the water up to your face, you're alert. And it turns out only, exactly 300 of them drank this way, by bringing the water up to their mouth. And God said, those are the ones we will use for the battle. Just those 300. And they went to battle against thousands and thousands of the enemy. It's interesting that there were 300. Because what is 300? Remember, that's the gematria value of Shin, 300. And what does Shin represent? Shin represents the Almighty, El Shaddai. And that's who was going to do the fighting. It wasn't the 300 men. It was Shaddai, El Shaddai, Almighty God. He was going to do the fighting for them. Nevertheless, we're in 1 Chronicles 21. And the point is, you don't need to number your troops before you go to battle. And this is a sin that David did. God doesn't want David numbering the troops. Okay? But Satan stood up against Israel and moved David to number Israel. When you look in this verse, you can see, you see Satan, his name. You see Israel. Notice there's two ets, two Aleph Tav. You've seen that before, okay? And then there's David's name. David, by the way, is a Dalet, Vav, Dalet. Nice, okay? Dalet is 4, Vav is 6, Dalet is 4. David's name adds up to 14. That's not a coincidence either. If you study the genealogies, whenever God makes this promise to Abraham that your descendants will never be and all this, so from Abraham, if you count the generations, there are 14 generations from Abraham's promise until the ultimate high point of Israel's existence, and that was King David. Then it was another 14 generations after David until they were at rock bottom. They were slaves, they were taken into captivity into Babylon. And then from their lowest point when they were in Babylon, back up until the Messiah, Yeshua, shows up, was another 14 generations. That's very interesting. 14 up, 14 to their lowest, and 14 to the Messiah. A total of 42 generations in all. 42 is 6 times 7. And then the Messiah shows up. Who's the Messiah? The Messiah is God, 7, and man, 6. Right? That's man's number is 6, God's number is 7. So, 42. But anyway, David is 14 generations, and it was 14 generations until he reached, he became the king of Israel. Okay, so let's now look at Satan's name, or in Hebrew it's Satan. Sometimes they put the hey in front of it, Hasatan. Okay, it's made up of a shin, a tet, and a nun. Okay, well the shin, remember, was 300, we just talked about that, and it's teeth, shin, tooth, destruction, okay? We have a new letter here, tet. We don't use tet very much, okay? It's the 9th letter of the Hebrew alphabet. Its gematria is 9. Its picture is a coiled serpent. In fact, if you look at the Hebrew letter for tet, especially, you know, I have it in 3 fonts here. The first font on the left is the David font, and it actually looks like a serpent. You have the part that stands straight up, and then the head would be up there, and then you have a tail that curls up around. Okay, so it even kind of resembles a serpent. All right, so there's tet. By the way, tet is the least used letter in the Torah. That's interesting. I think it's the total number of letters in the Torah, 304,805, and tet is used only 1,802 times, so not very much used. Any idea, by the way, what is the most used letter in the Torah? Anyone? Anyone? Bueller? The answer to that one is Yod. Remember Yod? It's the tiny little hand. The right hand is Yod. Okay? And remember, God uses the Yod to begin all of his names. Right? This is a very important letter. Yod is the only letter that floats. You would expect it to be the most used. Yahweh begins with Yod. Yeshua. Israel, his city, Jerusalem begins with Yod. Okay? And Yod is, I think it's 31,522 times. It's by far the most used letter in the Torah. Okay, the second most used letter, I think, is the Vav. Remember, Vav is used for and. It's about 1,000 times less used, but Yod is the most often used. Tet is the least. And now we go back to Satan, Hasatan. Tet is the coiled snake, and the final letter is the Nun. And Nun was, remember, its picture was a sperm or a fish. You can see the little tail moving. And Nun always represents life, because the fish's tail is constantly moving, up, down, right? It's got life, and that's how we get the letter N. Nun is the letter N. Up, down, up. It's the fish's tail, life. Got it? And remember, Nun is one of those final forms where you have 2 different shapes, and if it's the last letter, which this is the last letter of the word, so we use the long, elongated Nun there. Okay. So let's look at Satan's name. It's destruction, serpent, life. Satan, just the pictographs of his name spell out the destructive serpent of life. That kind of describes Hasatan. Now, let's look at the gematria values. What does his name add up to? Well, remember, Shin was 300, Tet is 9, Nun is 50, so Satan's name adds up to 359. What? 359? That's odd. I always thought Satan would be 666, but no, Satan, 666, that number was reserved for who? Antichrist, right? Antichrist, if you remember, he's going to be a man. He's going to be the most evil, horrible man on the planet, and Satan is going to come to this human and make him an offer. Bow down to me and I will give you the world. Satan made that offer to the most perfect man in the whole universe, Jesus Christ, Yeshua HaMashiach. And Jesus said, "Get thee behind me, Satan. You will have no other gods before me," okay? He's quoting Deuteronomy, Jesus. The most evil man in the world will take him up on the offer. And Satan will give him the world and he will become the ruler. And his number is 666. But Satan, his number is 359. So what do you do with 359? How does that apply to anything? Well, this is an interesting little tidbit here. If you go back and look at how many chapters there are, and this may be a coincidence, although I've told you before, there's no biblical Hebrew word for coincidence, so I don't know what to do with this tidbit, but Genesis has 50 chapters in it. Exodus has 40 chapters. Leviticus 27, Numbers have 36, Deuteronomy 34, Joshua is 24, Judges 21, Ruth 4, 1 Samuel 31 chapters, 2 Samuel has 24 chapters, 1 Kings has 22, and 2 Kings has 25. So from the beginning until the end of 2 Kings, you have a total of 338 chapters. Now, what's the next book of the Bible? 1 Chronicles, which is where we're getting this passage for today's talk. And we're in 1 Chronicles chapter 21. So we jump ahead 21 more chapters. Now, so what we're studying today is the 359th chapter of the Bible. How clever that in the 359th chapter of the Bible is the first appearance of Satan, his name, and Satan is 359. I think that's kind of clever, okay? Now, you know, in our Bible, it's in the English Bible, the books of the Bible are in a certain order. The Jews don't have that same order. They actually don't even have one book that they call the Old Testament. They call it the Tanakh, the T-N-K, the Torah, the Nevi'im, which are all the prophets, and the Ketuvim, which is all the writings. So the 359th book or chapter of their Bible isn't going to associate with the English Bible. But God knew that, and I think he still put it in that Satan's name would be the 359th, in the 359th chapter, the first mention of his name. And one other neat thing is, you know, we don't use the Hebrew calendar. The Hebrew calendar has 360 days in it, right? 12 months of 30 days each. We use the Gregorian calendar, which is 365 and a quarter days or something. Okay. Well, you know, if you add up all the days of the year, when is the 359th day of the year? It turns out it's the winter solstice, the day that we celebrate, or that the world celebrates Tammuz's birthday, December 25th. Okay, now most people don't celebrate it as Tammuz's birthday. The world is celebrating it as Yeshua's birthday. But isn't it funny that on the 359th day, this is the day that Satan has put it up for the whole world to be celebrating Jesus' birthday. And how do we celebrate it? With snowmen and holly and mistletoe and Yule logs and all this crap that has nothing to do with Christianity. You know, we did a video not so long ago on Jesus' birthday. That it's going to be in October or September, the Moed of Sukkot, right? But Satan has kind of twisted it so we're all celebrating this pagan holiday of Tammuz birthday on the 359th day of the year, Satan's day. Kind of irritating, isn't it? And you know what else? What is the big thing that most people think of, associate with December 25th Christmas? A guy named Santa, which, by the way, happens to have the same letters in English as Satan. And it's a guy in a red suit. We always picture the devil in a red suit with a pitchfork and horns. I don't think the devil actually looks that way. I think he always comes to us as shining and pretty and beautiful, right? Enticing. And then you get in there and he's got you in his clutches. All right? So, anyway, there's the talk. Thank you for listening. God bless. To God be the glory. To God be the honor. To God be the praise. This is some cool stuff, folks. And we'll be back soon. We've got lots of other videos. I invite you to check them out. And we'll see you soon. God bless. Bye.